about how Malvo said there were supposed to be more shooters, not just him and Muhammad. So we'll see what else we learn when the show comes on. Confessions of a D.C. Sniper with William Shatner premieres, as he said, tonight on AE.
So, Boyd Malvo claiming other conspirators involved, later dispatched. And we pull, again, from the Associated Press report on this story down at the very bottom. Malvo, who lives in segregation at a maximum security prison, said he is filled with hope and dread for his future. It's a little bit of both, he said. It's hope and dread because everything has to be repaid. Let's now shift gears, my friends, and run down all the latest alternative news that I am a fan of, that I find valuable, that I'm fortunate enough to be connected to in one way or another. And that would, of course, be NewWorldNextWeek.com, my weekly video series with James Corbett of CorbettReport.com. Our latest episode's up, Renouncing Citizenship, Pentagon Soft War, and Regulating Dust. Now, we already covered the Renouncing Citizenship, but we're going to get to Software and Dust on Cyberspace War and Food World Order, respectively. But again, NewWorldNextWeek.com will get you the feed for the high-quality downloads of the weekly show. Appropriately enough, following the murder and the mayhem and the DC Sniper, the latest episode from Corbett Report 140, Requiem for the Suicided. This is the latest entry in the ongoing series from CorbettReport.com. In the past, going over the story of Gary Webb, but in this episode, turning the focus on Sergeant Terrence Yakey, one of the first responder heroes at the scene of the Oklahoma City bombing, who discovered something that conflicted with the official story of the bombing, something that cost him his life. We went over, I guess perhaps several months ago now, when We Are Change Oklahoma put together a short documentary on the story of Sergeant Terrence Yakey. It's an amazing story. I highly recommend the episode. It's highly informative on the official conspiracy theory of the Oklahoma City bombing. And we put Terrence Yakey right up there with the aforementioned Gary Webb, or folks like Danny Castellaro or John O'Neill, other folks who knew too much. There's also latest interviews from CorbettReport.com with James Lane, Tom Secker, Michael Murphy, G. Edward Griffin, and, of course, the amazing Sunday Update episodes, the latest on the SEC secrecy, the flu vaccines 2010, and, of course, the government killing 9/11 heroes. Corbett Report even posted up a great video of Japanese fireworks at the Japanese Fireworks Festival in high definition up on youtube.com/Corbett Report. And again, much like perhaps my mixtape episodes, you sometimes have to take a breath. It can't be all hardcore news and politics all the time. But the latest episode from a man, Clyde Lewis of GroundZeroMedia.org, is called Digital Zombie. And this is a story that we briefly touched over either last week or the week before. But now the mainstream media has another crisis that they have to tell you about, and that is the evils of digital drugs, or I-dosing. The story that we originally referenced in Oklahoma highlighted a perceived crisis of children downloading MP3s containing sounds that, according to the report, induce the same effects as marijuana and LSD. The report was first filed by KWTV News Channel 9 in Oklahoma and demonstrated how a TV channel desperately wants to be the first to induce a mass psychosis, mass hysteria, moral panic by showing young people wearing headphones, listening to binaural beats and psychotronic drones, and tripping out. The episode is fascinating, and again, you can get the downloads from zeropointradio.com. Much like Clyde Lewis of GroundZeroMedia.org, they need your support to continue to do this amazing work. Clyde even has an update on I-dosing. Come on, feel the noise. And again, tying in the reactions to his latest episode, Digital Zombie. Now, on a sad note, my man Alex Ansary has posted what he is referring to the last edition of Outside the Box TV. It's episode 262. And he's been doing these shows for the last several years here on the Portland Community Media television channel. And unfortunately, I don't keep close enough contact with Alex Answer, even though we're both right here in Portland, Oregon. So I'm not exactly sure what he is up to or what he's going to do next. But as always, outside the box, fantastic information. I posted up and put the playlist together for you. It's in 6 YouTube parts, and it's all there for you. Outside the Box, episode 262, the final episode, I guess until we hear something else. Now, for the remainder 20-some minutes of this episode, and again, I love you guys for sticking with me, for going through all this. I wonder sometimes if even 2 hours a week is too much for folks, but then there's other times where 2 hours a week isn't nearly enough to go over all of this news. And again, I try and do it all justice, but there's no way I can go into all of it. The show has more or less over the years now become essentially, I think, your weekly news rundown, the massive news purge. We give you sometimes in depth, sometimes just a brief headline. I think most of what's going on across the world. And again, I thank you for the news tips. One of these days, we're going to get other editors posting stories and links to some of the sites. But again, I'm a one-man band, and it all takes a little bit of time. But again, thanks to all the folks who help this operation grow. And again, I'll remind you to hit the donate button at the top of MediaMonarchy.com. Your support helps keep independent alternative media going. Again, while we have the free and open web, as we do right now, all these things and all these bells and whistles and all these toys and the microphones and the lights and the camera and the Twitter and the tweets and all the bells and whistles, they're just tools, and we have to use them as effectively as possible. So having said all that, we're going to jump to cyberspacewar.com for all the latest, and we're going to start off with DEFCON 8.5, Gold Mines and Greatest Threats. A massive article from the Rupert Murdoch-owned News Corp Wall Street Journal. Massive article, video, interactive graphics. It's got hundreds of comments on the web's new gold mine, your secrets. A Wall Street Journal investigation finds one of the fastest growing businesses on the internet is the business of spying on consumers. They don't call it the worldwide wiretap for nothing. And going along right along with this, and we've now covered this under different headings, but again, it all ties back to Der Leader, the smiling change from the previous puppet, still fooling people, still with all the damn bumper stickers and t-shirts. God, it's particularly bad here in Portland, Oregon. But I do fortunately still see some Nader bumper stickers, some Cynthia McKinney signs. There's a few holdouts. But again, from allgov.com, Obama administration wants FBI access to web browsing history without a warrant. As part of the National Security Letters process, NSL, which permits the government to obtain records related to terrorist threats without a warrant, the Obama administration wants the FBI to gain access to a user's web browser history. Under the proposal, federal agents also could obtain email addresses and the times and dates that emails were sent and received without a judge's permission. But the content of the emails could only be had with a court order. Administration officials take the position that obtaining the email addresses and times is no different than obtaining a list of calls made by a telephone user, which is already allowed without a warrant. It is unclear whether the new rule would allow access to Facebook friend requests and other such social networking information. Everything continues. Barry Soetoro was the blank slate everyone projected their hope and change onto, and he was more than happy to say, yeah, gay marriage, yeah, in the war, yeah, green economy, yeah, blah, blah, blah. None of it. Google and Verizon near deal on pay tiers for the web. That's from the New York Times. We have told you from pretty much day one that they are setting up Internet 2, call it what you want. It's going to be a paid tier system. That's what's coming. And all they need is a catalyzing, catastrophic event, an I-9/11, if you will, and they're more than ready and willing and waiting with the I-Patriot Act. Biometric and other locks fail to foil hackers at DEFCON. That would be the Defense Conference, massive hacker conference, covered in depth on threat level. Biometric and other locks fail to foil hackers at DEFCON, and we see this all around the board. The more you say, oh, this is unbreakable, oh, there's no way you'll get in, makes people want to try and do it even more. I guess it just depends what color hat they may be wearing, black or white. But also, at the event, I believe an ATM was hacked, and it started to spit out money on stage. They showed a really inexpensive way to spoof and intercept telephone calls. Again, all these things. But again, the feds are always going to sell you on the safety of RFID chips and how secure these things are all going to be. And we see the drums beat more and more and more. Now aiming to seize control, hackers target power plants as U.S. and industry scramble to respond. That is from Fox43.com, and I believe that's just an Associated Press report. But more from just this morning on ABC News, the greatest threat. DHS battles hackers head on. DHS deploys special teams to battle hackers in cyber war for infrastructure. Former CIA director tells ABC News electricity grid vulnerability tops national security concerns. We see the drums being beaten, and we've even seen folks at Wired pretty much debunk the idea that the grids can just be hacked into by any guy. And again, this is what we've referred to as Webster Tarpley calls virtual flag terrorism. And they're just beating the drums for it, building it up more and more and more. And that's why we try and watch the prep of what's going on, what they're trying to prepare us for. And I think it's going to be a big punch in the Facebook. And just the opposite of what happened at the DEFCON event. ATMs aren't going to be spitting out money like a jackpot. It's all going to get fried on the grid. And of course they talk about infrastructure, and of course the Patriot Act says that anything you do against critical infrastructure, you're a terrorist. I believe we've seen a story about, I think it was in West Virginia, of people vandalizing Frontier internet communication headquarters and perhaps disrupting service. They may get charged under Homeland Security Patriot Act. But quickly, still on cyberspacewar.com, tax-funded Pentagon software usually ends up owned by corporations. Or Pentagon is losing the software. That would be software with an E in parentheses. But originally from Defense News, and again, thanks to Cryptagon.com, the DoD spends tens of billions of dollars annually creating software that's rarely reused and difficult to adapt to new threats. Instead, much of this software is allowed to become the property of defense companies, resulting in the Department of Defense repeatedly funding the same solutions, or even worse, repaying to use previously created software.